Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is the national security writer, intelligence writer for the Atlantic magazine, Shane Harris. Then later in the show, now listen carefully, we're going to be announcing the winner of our poll on who is the most dangerous, who is the worst member of the Trump appointees. You guys have responded tremendously, and we're going to tell you the winner very shortly, so stay tuned. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicsforum@gmail.com or for next week's show, and we'll get to as many as we can, but please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at politicon.com. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Miracle Made, Trust and Will, and Fay Nutrition in our show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because it really helps make this podcast happen. James, we are witnessing the most delicious saga of poetic justice that I might have ever seen. Few have spread lies and conspiracies more than Donald Trump and company. The birther lie about Barack Obama, that the Russian interference in the 2016 election was to help Hillary Clinton, the stolen 2020 election. Now, the January 6th riot was a peaceful protest. Now, the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy is coming to bite him. Epstein, the sexual predator and supplier of young girls, died by suicide 6 years ago, but MAGA, J.D. Vance, FBI head Kash Patel, and Don Bacina, they have been spreading the story that he supposedly had a list of prominent, undoubtedly establishment Democrats involved in this underage sexcapade. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, even said a few months ago she had that list on her desk. We couldn't wait to get it out. Then, James, what happened? This past week, Bondi said she really had nothing, that Epstein on his own committed suicide when Trump was president. So MAGA has gone wild. Release the list. What are Bondi and Trump hiding? You know, I'm not convinced there's some kind of bombshell in all that, but it's clear there is something that Trump does not want out. Otherwise, he'd just order his loyal servant Bondi to release it. It's also noteworthy that he speaks very nicely of Epstein's accomplice, Giselle Maxwell, who's currently serving a prison term for their crimes. She's the one person who knows a lot, and Trump goes out of his way not to offend her. He has ordered Republican office holders to keep quiet on this, but rank and file MAGA want to know what's on that list. They created this, and I don't think it's going to go away, James.
Well, you got to understand this. You have to understand how deep the pedophilia myth is in right-wing media. It's always been, they consider that Democrats run these child mills where they're raping children and they import them. And it was so staggeringly believed. If you remember, some guy drove from North Carolina to Northwest Washington to go to a popular pizza place called Comet Pizza that was owned by Jim Alphonsus, who had a relationship with David Brock. And he shows up looking for the child cages down where, and of course, there's no such fucking thing. But that guy believed this. And they have been told this repeatedly so many times that the Clintons were all tied in with Epstein, and it was all part of this giant international cabal of sex trafficking 13-year-old girls. They were unable to back off of it because we don't live in that media sphere or whatever it is that they live in. You know, and we would hear these stories, and our reaction is, oh, come on, man, be serious about believes that shit. The truth about it is, a lot of people believed it deeply, and a lot of them listen to these right-wing places. They donate money. They're on all kind of lists. I don't think that people could just let this go like that. And who knows, but you have to understand how deeply inbred this whole child molestation by elite coastal Democrats is in that whole goofy fucking right-wing media sphere.
Yeah, you're right. And as I say, I would be surprised if there's something explosive in there, but there is something embarrassing that Trump does not want out. I think that is quite clear. And ultimately, I think, because of what you just said, either through public pressure or even a vote of Congress, how many members want to vote not to release files of a sexual predator? They did it on a procedural vote the other day. They ain't going to want to do that very often. So I think it's something's going to come out. My fear, James, is this Justice Department will scrub it before releasing it. So let's hope there's another copy of whatever ever there is out there.
That you fear that like you fear the sun rising in the morning. It's not a fear. They got to do everything they can to get rid of this shit. Okay, they have this inbred, and like Bannon and Tucker, and they just can't let this go. If they do, they lose. They have their own sphere out there, and they can't afford to lose these people's trust. And they really believe this shit. Now, I don't believe I'm part of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great money raiser for him.
Oh, and it's a whole conspiracy that it all fits together. Except for it's all a giant fucking lie, but that's okay. It all fits together. And they can't, and I agree. And this thing doesn't, this story, what do y'all say? It has legs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got legs like Derrick Henry has legs.
Oh, man, this has, does it ever? Like Paul Bunyan. Anyway, another big story this week. Trump flipped and now is providing lethal weapons to Ukraine because he says Putin hasn't kept his word to him. Putin has played Trump like a fiddle. Remember when Trump was going to cajole the little North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un? Now North Korea is sending troops to help Russia and Ukraine and keeps advancing its nuclear capabilities. Like all authoritarians, Putin, Kim, and Trump are congenital liars. Trust is transactional. Why he trusted Putin in the first place, I have no idea. I hope the policy switch on Ukraine is real. I'm dubious. I wouldn't bet on it. I think Trump will do whatever he thinks is in his own interest. He certainly doesn't care about the Ukrainians. But it just, the idea that Trump trusted Putin. Well,
the other thing to remember is Trump has no strategy. He has no plan. He has no overall vision. He doesn't sit around and think how we can contain Russia and how we can cooperate with Western Europe or, stuff that people have thought of forever. And by the way, it worked. Okay. It kind of worked. All right. And it might be cumbersome, but what they set in motion in 1946 and 1947 has kept us out of a world war. We're now closer to it than probably we've ever been. But it would be something if he had an alternative vision of the world. Said, maybe some of these old alliances don't take it back. It was some thought out thing. This is totally ad hoc. He totally gives up anymore. He could not, if you told him, and I'd bet you any amount of money, if you gave a globe to him and you said, point to Iran, he couldn't do it. I don't know where the fuck it is. All right.
Well, he would want to know, is that Iran or Iraq? I mean, what's the difference? Is there any difference? No, James, you're absolutely right. It began over 80 years ago, the NATO alliance, CETO alliance. It's worked incredibly well. As I've told you, I'm so excited. In a couple of weeks, I'm going for the biggest thing on my bucket list as I get old. I'm going to Normandy. And that really was where it all began. It all was set in motion, the change. Trump has no idea that he doesn't have any. It is all about Trump. And
wait a minute. We know what he thinks. They're suckers.
Well, they could, yeah.
We know that. That the people that stormed that beach, they were a pack of suckers. Why did they do that? We already know. We know.
Didn't they have bone spurs, James?
No, let's put it this way. I mean, it was, when you stop and you think about any of these kind of invasions, the amount of logistical support and planning, and God knows what it took. I mean, it's a massive. Behold, so you say same thing with Okinawa, same thing with, in the Civil War, even the Revolutionary War. I mean, so much of these things are you go to the point of contact, and you always got to remember what went beyond the point of contact, how they got the supplies on shore. I mean, they had a lot of fighting after they got past Omaha Beach. But I'm glad you're going. It's quite a moving place.
I can't wait. People for 160,000, American, British, and Canadian troops in that incredible armada coming across the English Channel, largest amphibious landing in history. People forget there also were, I think, about 20,000 paratroopers or gliders who were going in behind the lines there.
Remember, they had all the fake invasion sites that they did.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that thing just didn't happen. That was not some brave guys, just which they did. When you go over there, ask the guy that there are people that now say that, one of Point de la Hawk or Colonel Earl Rucker went up straight up and took it. Ask the guy, to the person that you had, is it true that that's now thought that we really didn't need to do that? Or was that critical to the outcome?
We didn't need to do Point de la Hawk?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's some revisionist history. I do not know if it's correct. There's also in the Pacific, there's revisionist history that we never even had to fool with Iwo Jima. We're going to have to ask our friend at the Naval Academy if that really holds up. But those are two things that you see, these two myths about World War II that continue to today. And I do not know the right answer, but you will have the right answer, because I'm sure that you got the best guy in the world taking you around. He'll give you the straight shot. It doesn't detract from the bravery of the people that did it. Let me be very clear about that. Nor does, if they're correct, we should have bypassed Iwo Jima. That doesn't take away from Ira Hayes and the guys that went up, Joe Rosenthal took the famous picture. That's not what I'm suggesting. But just as a military historian, those are two questions that I'm really open to an answer on.
Yeah, I looked at a picture last night of Point de la Hawk, and there's been erosion. It looks so goddamn intimidating, even with the erosion. So I think that'll be a really good question. And as I've told you, Susan and David Eisenhower have gotten me the guide. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be as good as it gets. But we ought to think about having that Naval Academy historian. He's a great guest. Having him back on maybe in August.
Yeah, we should, because and also I think that we looked this up. I think Okinawa might have been a bigger invasion than D-Day, but I'm open. We can ask him that too.
Well, the incredible thing about D-Day was it was an amphibious landing. It was the biggest amphibious landing ever, which made it somewhat different. But there may have been more people involved.
Okinawa was amphibious. We could talk. We'll talk about it with him. It's not. It doesn't detract from anything. It's magnificent accomplishment on June 6th, 1944.
James, anything else on your mind? Polls, Supreme Court, or
there just came a VCU poll, which is historically quite good poll in Virginia, and it's like 49 to 36 or something like that. The Virginia is
going. Did they poll the AG's race?
I do not think that they did, but they're not going to. You're not going to win the governor by double digits and lose the AG.
I agree with you. I agree.
But and that's just one of many that comes out, and they're also underpolling the thing like crazy. The support seems to have trickled into other statewide races. Democratic State Senator Ghazala Hassim is reported 10 points ahead of GOP candidate John Reed, and the Lieutenant Governor poll found former Delegate Jay Jones leads Republican incumbent Attorney General Jason Myers 47-38. So you got an incumbent Attorney General at 38.
Right, 9 points, man. Yeah. It's going to be a big day in Virginia.
Yeah, it was a good question.
Big
right. It's going to be a huge day.
All right. Supreme Court does what the Supreme Court does, whatever the Republican president wants.
So I read a story in the Times, and I heard him yesterday, a day before yesterday, at a lengthy interview on public radio. One of the people that follows this is Adam Litvick, I think his name is.
Yeah, great court reporter.
And they don't even they don't even give you a fucking reason anymore. They just issue an order. All right. And I'm just telling you, it all started with Bush v. Gore. It all started. They don't even have to give you a reason anymore. They have now the arrogance and the power hungry and the obsequiousness to right wing stuff is, fuck it, we're just going to do it, and we don't have to tell you why we did it. I mean, and I mean, these are major cases that have major separation of powers ramifications. You know exactly what's going to happen. If this same court exists in 2029, there's a Democratic president, that they're going to go back on all these fucking decisions. They don't look at the law and figure out.
Well, they already did. They denied Biden some of that right. Flexibility.
It's the whole thing is total bullshit. It's just total 100% bullshit. There's no love of law, trying to extrapolate how the system works, or intentions in it, or any of that shit. They don't even give you a reason anymore. Just fuck it. We're going to do it, and you're going to like it.
Right. Okay. Don't forget to stay till the end of the show. We are going to announce the survey result of the worst Trump appointee. Over 1,000 votes. So please stay until the end. You will love this segment.
You know about hot and, thick and, but it's not just, I don't used to have a kind of claim that I could go through, the worst summers. I'm kind of like a guy in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You ain't seen winter till you've seen it up here. Well, guess what? New Orleans weather is coming to a neighborhood near you. So it's not just important if you live in the Gulf South, or you live in Arizona or something like that. It's important if you live in Indianapolis, or you live in Philadelphia, and you're going to need this. And I got news for you people. The summers are going to continue to get hotter. You want to make a safe bet that we're going to have a hotter summer this year, and it'll be hotter as we go along. And a good night's sleep is there, and this is an unbelievable tool to help you.
James, we're going to Europe in a couple of weeks, and I think I want to check with the hotels, not on what kind of services they offer, or do they have a gym, but do they have Miracle-Made sheets? Because it's hotter in Europe. It's hotter in Europe, apparently, than here. So,
that 100-degree temperatures in Paris are like that used to never happen.
Right. So, because, sleeping at the right temperature is a critical way to feel rested the next day. If you wake up too hot or too cold, we highly recommend that you check out Miracle-Made bed sheets so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Plus, the silver lining prevents 99.7% of bacterial growth, which means Miracle sheets require 3 times less laundry because they stay clean and fresh 3 times longer. Stop sleeping on bacteria that can clog your pores and cause breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle instead. Trust us, with no more gross odors, life is a whole lot better for your household. The NASA-inspired, temperature-regulating, silver-infused fabrics truly give you maximum comfort in any weather, and they make pillowcases and comforters also. So join us in getting better sleep every night. Not only are Miracle sheets luxuriously comfortable, they don't have the high price tag of other luxury brands. Miracle sheets feel nicer than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels, so it's a vacation every time you get into bed. Don't wake up in a pool of sweat. Upgrade your sleep as the weather heats up. Go to trymiracle.com/warroom to try Miracle-Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo, War Room, at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Now, Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle-Made. Go to trymiracle.com/warroom and use the code WARROOM to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40%. Again, That's trymiracle.com/war room to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Look for the link in our show notes.
Sleep clean and comfortable with Miracle Sheets.
Hey, let's welcome Shane Harris, now of The Atlantic. There is no better national security and intelligence reporter than Shane, which I think is attributable to his college education, a fellow Wake Forest Demon Deacon. Shane, you wrote a terrific piece on the Trump CIA director, John Ratcliffe, launching an internal review, the CIA note, of the agency's 2016 investigation of Russia involvement in that election. He claimed it showed the Democrats, including the CIA director, manipulated the intelligence to get Trump. But you wrote that the current report really offered no such evidence, and it appears the political charge actually was Ratcliffe.
That's right. This is, this is like the story that will not die, right? Is Russia's interference in the election, in which we all remember the intelligence agencies unanimously concluded was done to try and harm Hillary Clinton's campaign, and if they could, help out Donald Trump. And this is where the hacking of Clinton emails and the leaking of emails and the placement of social media and all kind of divisive memes comes from. That is basically ancient history. The Senate Intelligence Committee, which was led by Republicans at the time, did a very credible bipartisan investigation. It's more than 1,300 pages long. Everyone can go read it. It's online. They all came to the same conclusions that the CIA and others had. So the person for whom this is still a live issue is the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, because it still matters to his boss, Donald Trump. And so Ratcliffe came in and in last May told his analysts at the agency to do what's called a tradecraft review, which is basically go back to the analysis you did nearly 9 years ago, see what you could have done better, places we might improve in the future, that kind of thing. They do this review. It completely affirms everything they found 9 years earlier, quibbles around the edges with a couple of process issues, but doesn't really at all change the conclusions. And then Ratcliffe holds it up like a smoking gun and says, see, it's proof that the Democrats were all out to get Donald Trump. And it doesn't say anything like that. It's just an astonishing misrepresentation of a report that the director ordered that I gather didn't really end up saying what he would have liked it to have said.
Well, that's the second time this has happened because Trump tried it with the John Durham report 5 years ago, which also basically came up empty-handed. But one thing I think this says, Shane, we focused a lot on the lack of qualifications of Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and all that. We kind of have overlooked Ratcliffe, who once was rejected for National Intelligence Director because of his lack of qualifications and actually lack of truthfulness. And he's kind of gotten by while we focused on the others, but his record is no better, Shane.
Well, he has really taken a very different tack, you're right, than Hegseth or Gabbard, who have been very public with the social media posts and the television appearances and kind of going out of their way to really appeal to the MAGA base. And I think that's probably because both Hegseth and Gabbard have future political ambitions of their own. Ratcliffe has kept it kind of quiet. He doesn't issue this sort of, flame-throwing tweets. He doesn't make a lot of speeches, which is another reason why it's so interesting that he's chosen this moment to kind of jump onto that MAGA bandwagon about a story that is nearly 10 years old and you would think would have outlived its usefulness. But he plays a different kind of quieter, slower game, but he is very much a loyalist to the president and in that respect is no different than Hegseth and Gabbard.
Right. Well, he also sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department alleging his predecessor, John Brennan, and to some extent the FBI director, Comey, are culpable in this Russian story. I would normally just dismiss that. This is, he doesn't make the case, as you say. He's, a partisan. But given this Justice Department, I don't think that can be easily ignored.
It is troubling because you could absolutely, I think, imagine that this DOJ would find some reason to investigate him if those people, Comey and Brennan, if they wanted. What I think, though, is interesting about what Ratcliffe did here, and we're going to see what happens where this investigation goes, but I wonder if the point was not to get Comey and Brennan investigated, but to be able to say that they were under investigation. In other words, the announcement, the theater of it is kind of the point of it. Now, we'll see. I mean, if a grand jury returns indictments against these guys, we're in a totally different universe. But at least for right now, there's sort of this kind of theatricality to what Ratcliffe did and saying, well, I ordered this review and I think it might show evidence of, who knows, conspiracy, perjury. They haven't really said. And then that allows them to trigger this investigation so they can say that it's happening, which I think is something that then becomes its own storyline for the base.
And please the boss while you're doing it.
100%.
What is after less than 6 months, what is the Ratcliffe regime doing to morale and retention and everything else at the agency, Shane?
People I talk to say the morale is really low. And he came in and oversaw both a kind of a purging of some of the ranks and a getting rid of some of the so-called provisional employees. These are people who've been there for 2 years or less. And we saw that across all different government agencies and departments. So CIA sort of had its kind of purge period, if you like these other places did. And he has kind of gone about this mission of, taking some really political stances that make people uncomfortable at CIA because that's an apolitical organization. I mean, people have their political priors and their beliefs, but they don't bring it to the job. It's like law enforcement. You can't let it affect it. And I think in talking to our foreign allies, a number of them I've spoken to, they're nervous about some of the managerial decisions that he's made. They worry about the influence that the White House has on personnel decisions at the CIA, which traditionally it doesn't in some of these cases. So, morale is low. And I talked to a CIA veteran just the other day who was there for nearly 30 years and said something that just blew me away, which was, he said, I would not trust anything coming out of that building anymore. I mean, truly feeling like his fear is that the leadership of that place has become so political, and we've seen this from Gabbard in another instance, that he worries that the CIA would potentially alter intelligence or say something that wasn't entirely true in order to please the president or suit his policies. And when you've got an intelligence community that is in the business of saying what the president wants rather than telling him the truth, in my opinion, you've got a real crisis.
Oh my God! And what a switch from Bill Burns. But James Carville.
So Shane, how many Republican senators have signed off on that Intelligence Committee report are still in the Senate?
That's a good question. I think a number of them still are. One of them is currently the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who was on that committee. Right. So I have to go look at the roster, but a number of them, they're still there.
Yeah, and they might be asked somebody, of course, they'll shovel around, but what do you think? So my understanding is that the CIA had concluded that Iran did not was on the verge of producing a nuclear weapon. And we chose not to believe that. What effect does analysis have? And what's the sort of role of analysis in conducting defense policy or foreign policy?
I mean, it's crucial. I mean, the way that the intelligence community exists to provide information to the president and to senior policymakers so they can make these decisions. And the information has to be accurate, has to be timely, and it has to be unbiased. The intelligence community, you're right, had concluded that Iran was not trying to pursue a nuclear weapon. Ratcliffe, the CIA director, takes a different view of what their intentions are based on other things they're doing to sort of build the building blocks of a potential program. But the position was, they're not trying to pursue this program. Tulsi Gabbard actually testified to that fact a few months back, and I don't think the White House was really happy about that. But now what we've got is, Director Ratcliffe has said privately and told members of Congress, well, we're not so sure. We think you can read the intelligence this way or that way. That's his right to read it, but it kind of has that, it starts to feel like you're drifting into saying what the boss wants to do to get to the place where you can support the policy. And I think given Ratcliffe's recent statements where he's just been misrepresenting things that his own analysts are saying, that's going to make a lot of, I think, certainly Democratic lawmakers worried about whether or not they're getting, the straight talk from the CIA when Ratcliffe comes and appears before their committees.
I think that view is held by other, like the Defense Intelligence. I mean, they were not the only agency involved in intelligence. And as I recall reading about it, there were other people who had the same view, which is pretty kind of serious if we disregard Why do we spend all that money if we're not going to pay attention to them?
Well, that's it. And I mean, and look, if the president decided he wanted to attack Iran because he thinks he wants to set the Iranian program back, okay. But don't go around telling the American public that, the intelligence told us that they were just about to build a bomb, because that's not what the intelligence told us, right? So you want to make the case as the president to do something, great, do it. But he can't expect to just twist the intel to say what he wants it to say and make it sound like, well, I'm just following the CIA's guidance here. And Trump doesn't listen to the intelligence community anyway.
Well, Al, back to you. That's a pretty depressing thought, but we have a lot of them these days. We're not short of them.
It is depressing, Shane, and I think, when you talked about that 30-year veteran who said he wouldn't believe anything coming out of the Intelligence Committee, this whole foreign policy, national security apparatus is in shambles, it seems to me. There are a lot of reasons, incompetent people and political people and all that. One reason is that when things work well, it's usually because there is a good national security director, somebody at the White House who doesn't necessarily be a policy setter. Brett Scowcroft was the model. I think Jake Sullivan did a good. There's just no one to do that now. So therefore, tell me if I'm overstating. The whole purpose is let's just please the big guy.
I think that's right, Al. I mean, right now, Mike Waltz, who had been the national security advisor, who was actually just in front of a Senate hearing a little bit ago today to be the new UN ambassador, he was pushed out of his job after the whole Signal fiasco, which my magazine was involved in not a small part.
It was.
Marco Rubio is kind of doing this dual hat thing now, where he's the Secretary of State while he's also serving as the national security advisor interim. But they're really starting to kind of gut the National Security Council staff itself. These career people who are the subject matter experts who sit in the White House and they help formulate policy. And look, I think plenty of people could argue that staff may have become bloated and maybe it's too big and you can streamline it. But what seems to be happening here now is a creation of a foreign policy to reflect what it is that the president wants and believes. And that's just not how we traditionally do that in this country. We have a foreign policy apparatus set up to tell them what they think the truth is and to advise them on making decisions and not just tell them what makes them happy. And that's where I fear that, what we are starting to see now.
Well, one thing we know, they're not going to consult with any of their predecessors. You are going to be in Aspen later this week, the National Security Conference, whatever they call it out there, which is where people from different administrations have gone. They exchange ideas. They might even argue sometimes, but it usually has been beneficial. This administration, I think, for the first time, vetoed anybody going out there.
Yeah, they did. And there were about 7 or 8 very senior military officials, including the commander of the Indo-Pacific Command and there's a Defense Intelligence Agency director, to bring it back to, what James was saying about agencies and their analysis of Iran. And truly, the day before the conference was set to start, the Pentagon said, yep, we're canceling all of it. They're not going. So now they'll have to fill all those slots. But to your point, Al, that conference has traditionally been a place where very serious people of both parties who believe in the nonpartisan nature of doing national security and are trying to live that, they get together and they talk and they debate and they disagree, and then they all go out and have dinner together, right? And it's kind of a way of, bringing people together in an environment for candid discussion that flows a little more freely. And that is not what the White House wants senior uniformed flag officers doing right now. So I think it does send a very clear message. And the Pentagon spokesperson said, in so many words, this is the globalist elite and we want no part of it. I mean, they've sent people from the administration before. And by the way, Tom Barrack, who's an administration person, is scheduled to speak at that as well, by the way. We'll see if he shows up.
So I can clear up something. I was listening on the way here, literally 20 minutes ago, and Waltz was testifying, and Senator Chris Coons was asking questions, and I can clear up the Signal Gate thing for you, because you're right in the middle of it. It was all Biden's fault.
It was all Biden's fault.
Yep, of course. So
that's essentially what he said.
I just wanted to give you the latest intel. I'm a little bit ahead of the curve.
James, I don't like to nitpick, but aren't you letting Obama off the hook?
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably, Jimmy Carter.
What he said there is funny, though. He did get asked this question. He said, well, I'm just going to read you, Senator Waltz said this, from the direction from the head of CISA, this important agency, which, by the way, Trump just fired the guy who runs it anyway, whatever. And it said, we recommend the use of apps like this. And Coons looked at him and goes, does it say it's recommended for classified information? No, Senator, but there was no classified information in this chat. I mean, they're still adhering to this line that, Pete Hegseth, sending the flight plans for a bunch of, fighters to bomb Houthi targets was not classified, but whatever.
Shane, before we go, I want to bring up just one more subject that just absolutely bothers the hell out of me, and that is the Steel Dossier. I think that is the biggest break that Donald Trump ever got, was the decision of BuzzFeed to publish the entire dossier by Christopher Steele, a British intelligence expert. It was raw intelligence paid for by the Democrats. I suspect there was a lot of stuff that was good in it, but it was just raw intelligence. And it became irrelevant to these investigations. The Mueller report, the Senate Intelligence Committee, was just an appendix to the original CIA finding. And yet this is what Republicans and Trump talk about all of the time. I think you actually had the Steel Dossier back in 2016. And I mean, I usually believe in publishing, if at all feasible, but not raw intelligence files. And I think it was a great gift to Trump.
Yeah, I think it was actually ended up being a gift to him. We had a copy of it when I was at the Wall Street Journal at the time. And not only did we not publish it, but we had significant conversations at senior levels of the newsroom about whether to even mention that we had it, because it was kind of all over town and reporters were talking about it, but nobody had sort of put in print, hey, there's this thing written by this guy that says the following stuff. And that all kind of became obviated when BuzzFeed decided to publish it. Trump has never, it seems to me, been able to distinguish between the findings of the CIA and several other intelligence agencies about Russian interference and all the things we've talked about, and the Steele Dossier itself. It's almost like in his mind, they're one and the same thing. And I think, I was talking to somebody last week who was very senior career intelligence officer. She served for more than 30 years and had briefed Trump several times. And she said, whenever we would talk to him about Russia in 2016, we could not get it through to him that the analysis that we did and the findings that we in the CIA and the intelligence agencies made were about Russia and not about Trump. And Trump always thought they were talking about him. He as if the intelligence community as a whole had just focused on him and tried to damage him rather than explaining what Russia was doing in part to help him. And he couldn't distinguish between the two. And I think the Steele Dossier in his mind is like this just point of fixation that is the root of all the evil. And as you pointed out, it had nothing to do with the investigations at all.
No, I think as an editor, I might well have had a reporter write about it cautiously, but sure as hell would not have published the raw files.
Yeah.
Anyway, James.
No, it's a great job. I think this is going to just go on and on and on. Again, the most disturbing thing to me is we didn't pay attention to the intelligence we had. Just, that going forward, that's pretty troubling. But thank you so much.
And it's really troubling if there's something that is uncomfortable that the president needs to hear and they don't tell him, and it leads to a real foreign policy crisis, and God forbid people die.
Trust me, they won't tell him.
Shane, I was going to say, who would tell him? Who in this group do you have confidence would tell him?
I don't have confidence that any of them would tell him. I mean, I'm not even sure that Susie Wiles has the ability to really go to him and tell him that he's wrong. The chief of staff. It is not the way this administration is set up. That's not how he receives information. Advice is not even, I think, what you would call what people say to him. It's just, it is a troubling dynamic when there's right now, I can't think of anyone who would tell the president no. Maybe Melania, honestly.
Well, and between that and maybe not believing whatever intelligence Ratcliffe and Gabbard put out is frightening. But Shane, we have to let you go because you have a huge role. You have to fill in for all those 7 generals who aren't showing up.
Exactly.
So you got a lot of hats to wear this week.
Exactly. I got to sleep.
You were always a terrific guest, James.
Absolutely.
You were great.
Well, great to talk to you guys.
I'm not in Aspen. I'm in New Orleans. I got to tell you, the weather's a little different down here.
Come on out, man. We got room.
There you go.
You want to get up there and talk? We got room.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks, Slug.
Hey, please, no matter what your schedule, just today, stay till the end of the show. The last minute or so of Politics War Room today, we're going to tell you who won the worst, most dangerous Trump appointee. We had over 1,000 respondents, and there is a big winner that we will announce later in the show.
Take control of your own legacy. It doesn't matter if you got $2 million or $20,000. You want to do this. And it used to be very expensive. You had to go to a law firm that had a trust section and a lot of shit like that. Now, this is where technology can like help you do something that is totally in the realm of ordinary people.
James, this may come as a shock, but many of us aren't as young as we once were, and we want to be ready for any eventuality. No matter what age you are, it's critical to be prepared. So we had to sound the alarm. A lot of us don't realize that a will doesn't cover everything when it comes to estate planning. Thankfully, trust and will can help ensure that your loved ones are covered when it comes to things like medical decisions and power of attorney when it matters most. Don't wait to start getting prepared. Go to trustandwill.com/war room to get 20% off their simple, secure, and expert-backed estate planning services. Now, you know by now that James and I are tech experts, but no matter what your skill level, the website is super easy to navigate. That means that you can quickly find out about how Trust and Will can help you make sure your assets and future wishes are secure. I know I want my family to maximize any wealth we have, and our younger producer has said he's getting his dad to get this done ASAP so he can get his money. Now, I'm not too sure about that, but I know that Trust and Will can ensure that the future of what you've built is in your hands. It's the ultimate peace of mind. Their easy-to-use website is simple to navigate, with all your information and documents securely stored with bank-level encryption. It's easy to be skeptical at first, but they make your plans their top priority. Each will or trust is state-specific, legally valid, and customized to your needs. Better yet, they have an overall rating of excellent on Trustpilot with thousands of 5-star reviews. So don't wait. Join the hundreds of thousands of families using Trust and Will. After all, you can't control everything, but Trust and Will can help you take control of protecting your family's future. Go to trustandwill.com/war room for 20% off. That's 20% off at trustandwill.com/war room. The link is in our show notes.
Handle things right with Trust and Will.
Now for the outrage of the week. You know, James, every day, every hour, there is so much to be outraged about, with no check on Trump's abuses from lapdog congressional Republicans or a Republican Supreme Court. But I want to counter-program today. I want to pay tribute to one of the most exemplary journalists I have ever known, the Washington Post's great Dan Balz, who is stepping aside as its full-time chief political reporter. For years, Dan has personified all the virtues you want in a great journalist: integrity, fairness, thoroughness, and total. I hope he continues to write. He makes all of us better as informed citizens when he does. But I also hope that Dan and Nancy get some well-deserved relaxation. Dan is the pride and joy of Freeport, Illinois High School. By the way, their nickname, the Freeport High School nickname, James, is the Pretzels. How many high schools do you know who are nicknamed the Pretzels? But anyway, to the greatest pretzel of them all, thanks, Dan.
I concur. Balz is like consummate pro. Has been doing this for forever, God knows, since the 80s, I guess. And a well-deserved retirement. And like you, I hope he can weigh in with, a couple of 3 pieces a year, still have the benefit of his wisdom. The outrage has kind of been triggered by 3 events that I just cannot get out of my mind. One started with I hear this from friends of mine who don't even consider voting Republican, all right? I mean, if they donate to Democratic candidates, that they vote Democratic. And in a short period of time, both said, you just got to see, James, that the Democrats just don't run these big cities well, and then they're just not very good at crime. And then last night, I had dinner with a journalist in New Orleans and the police chief. And of course, the murder rate in New Orleans has dropped historically quickly to historic lows. And they ran a story in the paper. And the governor of Louisiana is a Republican. His top guy called the journalist and said, "You didn't give the state police enough credit." So we found out there are 900 uniformed NOPD. There are 40 state policemen in New Orleans. But they knew that they couldn't let a story go to say that the crime was dropping in New Orleans because, well, we had a black mayor and we were supposed to have high crime. Then this morning, I got up and I read, as I do every day, as you do, Jed Legum. All right? It was talking about how fast the crime rate had dropped in Baltimore. All right? Baltimore is the poster child for a dysfunctional, crime-ridden, poverty-ridden city. All right? That's not true. It's not. There is no evidence, none, that cities with Republican mayors, Oklahoma City, Fresno, used to be Jacksonville, actually now Dallas, there's no evidence, none, that they're any better. In fact, the largest crime drop in the history of the country was in a Democratic presidential administration. And this all starts back. In the 90s, we came, somebody, I think it was Chris Nash, and I don't blame him, and my point is not to, is the Democrats were the mommy party and the Republicans were the daddy party. So yeah, if you wanted neonatal care, or you wanted Social Security or Medicare, or you wanted a kind, more just party, then you would go to the mommy party. But if you wanted a low crime rate, or you wanted a booming economy, you wanted people who were going to make the tough decisions, then you're a Republican. Now, let's take the economy. Taking a little long here, but I'm trying to make a point. Every piece of evidence, you understand, not 100%, no matter what time frame that you use, and please try to correct me on this because you're going to fail. And you can take any time frame you want, after World War II, after the end of the Cold War, the start of the 60s, this century, anything you want. It's not even close. But we accept this narrative. And what really impressed me is immediately they called and said, "Oh, no, you got to give us credit for this. You can't get that involved." We never called. And if somebody if they want to do something worth a shit at the DNC, which I'm not sure they ever do, they should have a whole section. And when they see stories like this, call the journalist, call the talk radio person, call whoever it is, and correct it immediately. We don't need to, I've heard this shit we need to take that off the table. We need to take crime off the table, and we need to talk about Social Security Medicare. James, we need to take economic issues off the table and talk about a woman's right to choose. And that shit, that advice, and that shit over a long period of time is the reason that the public is so misinformed on this. And over a period of time, press accepts this narrative, Democratic strategists accept this narrative, and you come to this acceptance of the mommy and the daddy party, and it's all bullshit. There's no historical reason to justify this in any way, shape, or form. And I just think we got to be very vigilant on this, and we have to be very aggressive on it.
Agree.
Okay, you are what you eat. It is true. There's 6,000 studies to show that nutritional intake has a lot to do with life expectancy, has a lot to do with staying healthy. And the truth of that is, 5 years ago, if you wanted dietary advice, you had to make an appointment, you had to go see a dietitian, you had to sit there, pay them, you got 45 minutes, and they give you a list. Now, world-class dietary advice is right there. you don't need to go see a registered dietitian or anything. The registered dietitians are right there for you at a price that anybody can afford. And boy, if you want to know what, I used to watch, I still to some extent watch about sodium in foods, learn how to read a label. It's essential, and it extends life, and it makes the life you have a lot better off.
Yeah. So, you're right. Forget fads. Your diet affects your energy levels, your mood, your sleep, and long-term health. That's why Fay Nutrition is so great. Fay connects you directly with registered dietitians, real food and nutrition experts, for personalized nutrition counseling tailored specifically to you. The best part is that all their dietitians take insurance, so 95% of the people pay zero. Did you hear that? Nothing for their sessions. That's right, zero. This podcast is sponsored by Fay. Fay matches you one-on-one with a dedicated dietitian who will help you understand your body's unique needs. Together, you'll create a sustainable, evidence-based program, not just a quick fix, to help you build healthy habits and achieve your health goals. Now, after finding out that insurance can help, there are no excuses. Forget one-size-fits-all diet plans. Create a customized program tailored specifically to you with Fay. And whether you're trying to lose weight, dealing with low energy, digestive discomfort, navigating food allergies, managing conditions like PCOS or diabetes, or you just want clarity in all the confusing diet noise, personal guidance from Fay could be the exact foundational support you need. They believe expert nutrition counseling should be accessible to everyone and make it simple to find a dietitian to fit your needs and instantly check your insurance coverage before signing up. Like we said, the vast majority of people pay zero for their sessions. I know for a fact that we all find excuses to avoid spending cash, but I think you'll quickly realize it's finally time to handle your health with Fay. Having a personalized nutritionist used to cost the big bucks. Not anymore. With Fay right now, listeners of Politics War Room can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as no money by visiting faynutrition.com/warroom. That's faynutrition.com/warroom. One last time. That's FAY nutrition.com/warroom. Make sure you use our URL so they'll know we sent you. The link is in our show notes.
Take control of your nutrition with Fay.
We're going to now do our listener questions, but I want to tell you, as soon as we finish, please stay tuned, because in a little over 5 minutes, we're going to announce the winner of the Carville Hunt survey of the most dangerous and worst of the Trump appointees.
And a guy I voted for lost.
10 candidates. I mean, it was a tough one, but a lot of you voted, and just in a few minutes, we're going to tell you who won. But first, we want to go to our favorite segment, which is the listener questions. Again, great ones coming in this week. James, Dr. Sue in Cumberland, Rhode Island. She says, I know I am old, born in the 50s. Sue, you're a kid if you're born in the 50s. But am I alone in seeing that billionaires fighting over control of our government and political system is just wrong?
Well, not only Dr. Sue, one of my favorite states. God, I have so many friends in Rhode Island. It may be small, but let me tell you, it packs a lot of power. It might have the best Senate delegation of any state in the country, to be honest with you.
Oh, it sure does.
Yes. And by the way, you get older, and, you do get older, but you do get wiser. And Dr. Sue, you're a very wise person in Rhode Island, to say the least.
Yeah. Pete, and another one of my favorite states, Raleigh, North Carolina. Pete says, that we pointed out last week that one reason Harris lost was her inability to separate herself from Biden. Doesn't every Republican have that problem in 2028? It's different, Pete. They might certainly, J.D. Vance, if he were the nominee, would have that problem. I don't know what Trump's popularity will be in 2028. I suspect it will be a lot lower than it is now. Now it's not very good. But there's one thing. There is a MAGA base, and it's strong. There was not a Biden base. There would have been a few people who would have been upset if Harris had broken on a few issues, not most, but a few issues in her convention speech. But it wasn't like breaking from the MAGA base. So, yeah, it might be a problem for Republicans in 2028, but we'll see.
Well, first of all, a lot of people, I get a lot of comments, and you do too, and you see a lot of people, the Democrats need to be more like the Republicans. But first of all, I'm sorry, it's really not much of a Republican Party anymore. It's all Trump, it's all MAGA. It's a little bit different. What Democrats seem a little more less organized because we're a coalition, and I certainly don't want to be part of a personality cult. I don't believe that at all. But I don't see how they come 2028, they can't escape Trump. They just can't. They can. And boy, if we can't drive that home, but we can't drive anything home. But the less that we talk about it, the more we talk about the future, because people are going to be so sick of this, it's going to be unbelievable. And if I was a Democrat, I'd say I'm going to release everything to do with Jeffrey Epstein. And I want to start our future tomorrow, but we can't. If there were crimes committed, obviously, we got to look into that. And I just don't think it's in our interest to wrap Trump around their necks like they wrap Biden. And we had a lot to do with that. Biden staying in until June 27th gave him an opening. And then finally, on August the 21st, everybody came to their senses, but it was either too late or we didn't do anything to separate ourselves. There's some truth to both. I think there's more truth to the latter, but that's what happened.
Sure did. One of the great tragedies of all political history, American political history. James Craig in Jonesboro, Tennessee, says, are change candidates the secret to winning? If so, can we bring in enough in time?
Yes. Wildly in the affirmative. And I would just give me a chance to address them. Jonesboro, Tennessee. One of my better friends was from Jonesboro, Louisiana, which is a town like right in the middle of North Louisiana, named E.L. Bubba Henry. He was a Speaker of the Louisiana House, and Bubba died a couple of months ago, and I got a chance to visit with him before he did. So I want to take this opportunity to pay a little tribute to E.L. Bubba Henry. Of course, Peter Hart and Mark Shields and myself led him to a 9.6% of the vote.
You almost got to double figures, James.
I asked you if I could round up to double digits. But the answer is, if we don't, yes, we should run 100% as the change candidate. The reason we lost in 2024 is quite simple. The country wanted change, and we refused to give it to them. I don't think we're going to repeat that mistake.
Well, I don't either, but some primaries matter. That's why in Michigan, I'm cheering for Mallory McMurrow to win that Democratic Senate primary. She will be the change candidate, and I think in other states there will be people like that. Now, look, there's some places where people have such gravitas. Roy Cooper in North Carolina, that it doesn't matter as much. But to the extent that you have a choice between a an incumbent, if you will, or a change candidate, man, go for change.
Look at the Democratic primary in the New York mayor's race, if you all know the power to change it.
Yeah.
Look at it. Why do you think Spanberger's going to win by 15 points? Because she's the change candidate.
Right. Same in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Even though they have a Democratic governor, certainly you identify Mikey Sherrill more as a change candidate than the.
And you'd be surprised if you run on change, even if you're kind of tagged with an incumbent party, you can do it. It's not that hard. It's done all the time.
Right.
But it's going to be a staggering Democratic year in 2026.
Rob in Rosemont, Pennsylvania. That was the home of one of my first girlfriends, so I remember it very fondly. I'm sure she doesn't, if she's still around. Rob asked from Rosemont, healthcare is just too complicated. How can Democrats effectively cut through this fog? Rob, I disagree with you. I think parts of healthcare are complicated. It's not complicated to say they are cutting Medicaid. They are cutting Medicaid and in part to finance tax cuts for the wealthy. That's just a simple fact. It is not complicated to say that they are cutting back the affordable health care subsidies. That is a fact. And it's also not hard to say that if their budget deficits achieve the levels they're likely to achieve, that's going to require some Medicare cuts. So, yeah, if you get in the weeds in healthcare, Rob, it can get complicated. But boy, it's not hard to talk about what the Republicans have done, I think, to injure healthcare for a whole lot of Americans.
Okay, so Rob, in one sense, you're correct. It's a kind of confused system. It's kind of complicated. The truth of the matter is, at its core, it's a explainable issue. There are three ways, and only three ways, that healthcare gets paid for. One is by the employer, two is by the individual, and three is by the government. All right. The insurance, the individual can have insurance. Medicare is nothing but a giant insurance policy for the country. So if you take away the amount that the government reimburses, you have to increase the amount that the individual reimburses or the corporations reimburse. It's a three-pronged thing. If one goes away, then it's more of the other. Now, of course, Trump famously said, who knew that healthcare was so complicated? Well, it's really complicated. And there's two things that people feel very, very personal about. One is their money and the other is their life. And healthcare is the intersection of the two things that most people think about and most people are concerned about. So it is, in one sense, a complicated, multi-layered problem. In another sense, it's a kind of simple thing. Who's going to pay? You know, you, your employer, or your government. It's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sure is.
And that's good. But I'll make one other point. Some people have, because of diseases, of health conditions, have to spend a lot more money. There are a lot of people that they live to be 86 and they go to sleep one night and they have a heart attack and they're dead and they don't cost the system a lot of money and they pay into it. Some people have diabetes when they're 15 years old and, you know, end up with huge medical bills. Well, a just and moral society says we're going to take care of these people, as we well should. Not only do I have any objection to it, I think it's a question of morality that we do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it is it really usually has been a winning issue for Democrats. I think it will be as big a winning issue almost as ever in the 2026 midterm because of that big, ugly bill that was just passed. Sure. James, Patricia in Vancouver, Canada. My friend Norm Burlstein and Jane Boone, his wife, are out in Vancouver. I am so jealous. What a wonderful spot that is. But Patricia asked, are Governor Abbott of Texas and the Republican state legislatures attempt to redraw congressional districts the beginning of states reshaping the congressional elections of 26 and 28 to ensure they're favorable to the Republicans and Trump?
Well, you know, you're more up to date on issues than I am. I don't know how they can get 5 more to gerrymander the goddamn thing so much.
It's unbelievable. I
don't know how much more blood they can get out to turn. But what they're basically saying, I understand what they're saying. We can't win a fair fight. We've always known that. So we're going to do everything we can not to have a fair fight. Now, you know, what will happen is that they'll do that. Illinois will come back and try to squeeze some. New York State will come back and try to squeeze some. California come back and try to squeeze some. And you're just going to have an entire fight of seeing who can gerrymander the most. I don't, you know, I just wish there was some way we'd just go to, you know, having a usual suspects of 7 people draw congressional districts and just look at continuity, adjacency, and just go about that and get a true reflection. But I think right now, for the Democrats to win the Congress, they have to get something like 53, 54% of the popular vote. I mean, it's blatantly anti-democratic. I mean, blatantly.
Well, those those redistricting commissions have worked in places like California and Arizona, but
Well,
they
they
don't.
work if the other side uses them.
Right,
They don't
right.
work if one people says, "Hey, we're going to play by the rules," and the other side is, "Screw your rules." But we don't have rules here. We just do what we want. So and I would say if they want to do that, then fine. But the other people got to do it too. They want all the Democratic states to have these commissions, and then and then Trump orders the Texas legislature to drop 5 more districts. There you
Well,
go again.
Sandy in Durwood, Maryland, has a perfect follow-up to this. She says, what are the chances that this country will hold a genuine series of elections in 2026? Sandy, I would put it at 80%. What that says is there's a 20% chance, which I've never thought in my entire life, that maybe we won't. That if Trump and the Republicans see some kind of a Democratic wave, that they will try to block it in any way they can. The Justice Department already is subpoenaing voting rolls in various states. They're not doing that for better information. They're doing that to figure out a way that they can stymie voting, Democratic votes. So I think I cannot imagine a time in my entire life covering politics that I ever thought there was even a slight chance that an election could be called off or postponed.
So this is a reasonable scenario. But the Democrats have blowout wins in Virginia and New Jersey. I mean sticker shock numbers. I don't mean just winning. I mean like, holy shit. And I think that's what you're going to see. Then you're going to start seeing the congressional generic. Then the Republicans start coming home and say, shit, man, we're going to lose some stuff. And then somebody is going to say 2 words that is going to trigger Trump in ways that you can't believe, and it's called the Senate. All right, don't kid yourself. If this momentum keeps going, the United States Senate's in play. I know it's 53-47. I know the vice president gets to break a tie. I know that the one more vulnerable, we have to win a lot of red seats to get to win 4 Senate seats. I'm telling you, it's not impossible. I think we're going to win in North Carolina. Highly likely to win in Maine. Okay, I think we're much better. But I think the United States Senate is going to come down, you ready, to Mississippi. And I think we have a much better chance of picking up that Senate seat than anybody really believes. But if they think they know they're going to lose the House, and then people come in and give them poll briefings and said, sir, now you're not going to be able to get any appointments through, and they're going to hold hearings left and right. And you don't want Sheldon Whitehouse up your ass. I can tell you that right now, because you're not going to look good. And that's why your 20% is not a ridiculous figure. It's real possibility, because he's going to see what's coming around him. The combination of Virginia and New Jersey, the deteriorating polls, and the possibility of losing the United States Senate will make him try to think of anything not to have it away.
That's a frightening prospect, but I think it's absolutely...
I think we need to be vigilant. I agree with you.
Absolutely. James, I have saved the best question for last. It is from Jim in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, wow.
Jim asked both of us, he said, are you ready for this question? I mean, I want to give a build up here, because this is real. This may be the greatest question of all times. Where did you both learn to speak such good English?
Thank you, Jim. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I love you, Jim.
I was kind of history. I think all the English I learned was from my 6th grade teacher called Mother Robert. And she made us diagram sentences. I don't know if you remember that when you were in school.
I do, yeah.
My daughter had to do it in high school in like 2011. And I think I'm not very good. My grandma is not very good to the extent I have anything in the grandma, which is not much. I think I owe it almost all to Mother Robert, who taught me 6th grade English.
Well, I don't know if we should take credit or not, but Jim, I got to tell you, you are our favorite listener questioner today, and it's Boise, Idaho is really just kind of a wonderful place in a very troubled state.
Beautiful
So,
place. Boise State's a very, of course, they're famous for their blue field and their football team. Very, very good schools. There's a lot of.
But Jim, you have set a standard that we'll try to achieve in ensuing weeks.
That's the first time I've ever been accused of good English, but like Jack said, I don't deserve this, but I don't deserve arthritis either.
Every time we screw up a subject or a predicate, Jim, I'm going to think about you. So
dangling participle.
All right, guys, one more today. We now are going to announce. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out a survey of who was the most dangerous, the worst Trump appointee. We gave you 10 choices and the ability to write in. And we got over 1,000 respondents. I remember Peter Hart and Bob Teeter telling me years ago that for a national survey, we could do it with, I think, 840 respondents. So for our podcast listeners and a few others, we had a response rate much greater than that. The winner, and really by a landslide, James, this was not close. I thought it might be close. The winner was Stephen Miller, the hate-filled White House Deputy Chief of Staff who hates immigrants, who was the author of some terrible bills in the first administration separating kids from the parents. And now he's going, and they have totally forgotten about their original pledge to primarily go after deporting migrants who had committed crimes. They're now raiding Home Depot lots, any kind of shopping center in a Hispanic neighborhood. He is somebody, his former colleagues in the book written about him say he's a white nationalist, but he is a very powerful figure, James, and he won in a walk.
Well, I could see that. I did. I voted. I'll be very clear, and I'm going to disclose my vote. Alzheimer's. I voted for Hedgesmith. Not that I think that the odiosity, is that actually a word? I don't know. That's Alfred and Boise, if it is.
Let's ask Jim. Jim.
Okay. I can't, no one can deny what an odious person that's Stephen Miller is. I pick Hedgesmith because I think the damage that he can do to defense, I think we have a new president in 2028. Human suffering that this guy's caused is unbelievable. The economic pain he's causing is unbelievable. But I think that can be corrected more quicker or more quickly than the politicization of the United States military, which, is pretty critical. And they did, they're putting buffoons, and good people are resigning every day, and you just can't bring that kind of experience back. But I can understand why people voted for Stephen Miller, but I cast my ballot for Pete Hedgesmith.
Well, I did vote for Stephen Miller because, among other things, I think if Stephen Miller wants to, he has such clout with Trump, he can interfere with the Defense Department. As a matter of fact, there are stories he really wants to be National Security Advisor, a post that's gone unfilled. And he's a man who is so mean, but he has Trump's total confidence. So it was there weren't easy choices, but Stephen Miller got 37% of the vote, and since there were write-ins in an 11-person field. And tomorrow morning, we're going to put out on the website, on Substack and YouTube, we'll put out the 2 through 11 finishers. But I will say this ahead of time: the people that finished second, third, and fourth, James, combined, they didn't get the same as much a percentage vote as Stephen Miller.
Yeah, no. Look, I understand the vote. I cast my ballot differently, but I'm voting. I'm gonna vote for Willie Mays or Walter Johnson
or Henry Aaron, who I would vote for. Yeah, I couldn't stay up for that entire All-Star game, but I love the tribute to Henry Aaron.
Right.
So, All right. Thank you for voting. We'll try to come up with other contests, and tomorrow morning we'll give you 2 through 11. Thank you all for listening. And for those of you letter writers, if we didn't get to yours this week, we'll get to it next week. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsors, Miracle Made, Trust and Will, and Fay Nutrition in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, you help make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go and take a look. You also can find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Now remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.